There are 25 minutes in the Nancy Guthrie timeline that has gotten my attention. At 1:47 in the morning, Nancy's doorbell camera disconnects. And from what I understand, this just means that it disconnected from the Wi-Fi. Now at 2:12, the system detects activity again, which after a little research, this means that if a Nest doorbell camera is battery operated, which I believe that Nancy's was, then the camera, it'll still capture images on the local device and it'll store it in the cache files. And it will later upload to the cloud once the Wi-Fi connection is restored. So that's the 25 minutes that's got my attention.
A doorbell camera disconnected at 1:47 in the morning. 25 minutes later, the system detected a person at the door. At 20:28 a.m., the pacemaker monitoring an 84-year-old woman's heart lost its signal, with her phone still sitting inside the house. 41 minutes. That's the window where Nancy Guthrie vanished from her own home.
And now, some of you have spotted something in the FBI's own video that makes those 25 minutes even more important. That's a light. A light that it appears briefly off to the side of Porch Guy. And I don't know what it is. I don't know who's holding it or whether anybody's holding it. But today we're going to slow this thing down and I'm going to slow it all the way down to 0.25 speed in the video. And we're going to look at Porch Guy and see what he's doing. And we're going to look at that unexplained light.
The FBI released doorbell footage on February 10. A man in a ski mask, gloves,
my name
a
is
jacket.
Charles Brewer, and I've spent 21 years in law enforcement. And one thing that I've learned, doing these videos is sometimes thousands of eyes looking at the same piece of evidence will notice something that one person misses. And that's exactly what has happened here. Several members of the Brew Crew started pointing me towards something in the FBI video that I haven't given enough attention to. And I really haven't even noticed it up until now. So we're going to go back to the porch, but this time we're going to look at it differently because I think the bigger question may be, was Porch Guy the only person working at
a holstered handgun approached the front door carrying a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack, a backpack the Bureau says is sold exclusively at Walmart. He discovered the camera in real time, reached down, pulled weeds from Nancy's own yard, and covered the lens. That's the man who has come to be known as Porch Guy. As of the FBI's last public statement,
the publicly reported timeline gives us 3 extremely important times. 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12 a.m., the security system detects activity. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker application disconnects from her phone. Those 3 times create 2 windows. First, 25 minutes, 25 minutes, then 16 minutes. And altogether, we're looking at approximately 41 minutes between the camera disconnect and the pacemaker app disconnect. That's where I want to stay today, because when you simply read those times, they don't sound particularly remarkable. 1:47, 2:12, 2:28. But
he has not been publicly identified. But here's what's been sitting in plain view, and it's what this entire investigation might hinge on. Those 3 timestamps, 1:47, create 2 windows.
Think about what this offender potentially had to accomplish. Approach Nancy's residence without attracting attention, deal with the security cameras, gain access to the house, locate Nancy, control an 84-year-old woman, deal with whatever confrontation occurred that resulted in Nancy's blood reportedly being found outside the residence. Move Nancy from the house, get her to a vehicle or another location, and potentially remove or disable additional evidence, and then leave the area without attracting attention. That's a lot. Now, maybe one person did all of it. That's entirely possible. But there's a difference between something being possible and something being the scenario that makes the most sense. And that's why I become
The first is 25 minutes. The second is 16 minutes. When you simply read them, they don't sound particularly remarkable. But start putting physical action inside that timeline. Now those numbers begin to mean something. Think about what one person would have had to accomplish in that first window alone.
He approaches the house. He's responsible for the camera. He's responsible for gaining entry. He's responsible for Nancy. He's responsible for moving her. He's responsible for whatever happened inside or outside the residence. And he's responsible for getting away. Now that means that every task happens sequentially. One person, can only physically be in one place at one time. If he's dealing with the camera, he's not simultaneously preparing a vehicle. If he's inside dealing with Nancy, he's not outside watching the street. If he's moving Nancy, he's not simultaneously cleaning something up somewhere else. Everything has to happen one step after another. And that's where, time becomes important. Now, don't misunderstand me here, because I'm not telling you that there was another offender. We're testing the scenario. But put a second person into that same 25-minute window. Suddenly, tasks can happen simultaneously. One person deals with the camera. Another watches the residence. One person enters and another prepares transportation. One person controls Nancy, another handles the equipment. One person moves Nancy. Another watches for headlights, neighbors, police, or anyone else who could interrupt them. Now, the exact same 25 minutes begins to look completely different.
Approach the residence without attracting attention. Deal with the security cameras. Gain access to the house. Locate Nancy. Control an 84-year-old woman. Deal with whatever confrontation occurred that resulted in Nancy's blood reportedly being found outside the residence. Move her from the house. Get her to a vehicle or another location. Potentially remove or disable additional evidence. And then leave the area without attracting attention. That's a lot. One person doing all of that in 25 minutes is possible. But there's a difference between something being possible and something being the scenario that makes the most sense. If Porch Guy acted alone, every task happened sequentially.
I received comments telling me that I needed to go back and watch the FBI video again, specifically watch the right side of the screen. So that's what we're going to do. And before I show you this, I want to establish something. I'm not going to tell you what you're seeing because I don't know. We're dealing with dark, compressed video surveillance footage, and light can reflect. Infrared cameras can produce strange effects. Compression can create shapes that aren't really there. Movement can make things appear larger than it actually is. So I'm not identifying this as another person. I'm not identifying, it as a flashlight. I'm certainly not identifying it as a selfie light. I am calling it exactly what I believe that we can safely call it, and that is an unexplained light source. Now watch.
One person can only physically be in one place at one time. If he's dealing with the camera, he's not simultaneously preparing a vehicle. If he's inside dealing with Nancy, he's not outside watching the street. If he's moving her, he's not simultaneously cleaning something up somewhere else. Everything has to happen one step after another. But put a second person into that same 25-minute window. Suddenly tasks can happen simultaneously. One person deals with the camera. Another watches the residence. One person enters and another prepares transportation. One person controls Nancy. Another handles the equipment. One person moves her. Another watches for headlights, neighbors, police, or anyone else who could interrupt. The exact same 25 minutes begins to look completely different. And that brings us to something that several viewers have noticed in the FBI's own video.
Now look at the right side of your screen. Don't watch Porch Guy. Watch over here. There. The light appears. And what caught the attention of some of you wasn't simply that there was a light. It was the apparent movement of the light. Some viewers believe that they're seeing it move from a higher position downwards. Others believe that they can actually make out something resembling a hand around it. Now, one viewer believes that it could be a small rectangular selfie-style light being held by another person. And that's an interesting theory, but we're not going to turn a theory into evidence. Now,
it appears briefly off to the side of Porch Guy. An unexplained light. In dark, compressed video surveillance footage, light can reflect. Infrared cameras can produce strange effects. Compression can create shapes that aren't really there. Movement can make things appear larger than they actually are. But what caught the attention of some viewers wasn't simply that there was a light.
Now, does the light remain stationary or does its position change? Because movement matters. If we're simply seeing a fixed porch light or reflection, we'd expect certain characteristics. If the source itself moves, now we have a different problem to explain. Now, what's the relationship between the light and everything that surrounds it? Let's watch it again. What caused that? This may be even more important. Watch the porch guy, then watch the light. Are their movements connected? In other words, when porch guy moves, does the light move away from what would suggest that it's attached to him or something that he's carrying? Or does it appear to move independently?
It was the apparent movement of the light. Some believe they're seeing it move from a higher position downwards. Others believe they can make out something resembling a hand around it. One viewer theorized it could be a small rectangular selfie-style light being held by another person. And that's an interesting theory. But we're not going to turn a theory into evidence. Does the light remain stationary? Or does its position change?
Now, there are several possibilities. It could be some type of flashlight. It could be an electronic device. It could be equipment associated with the porch guy, and it could just be a reflected light. It could be an infrared, or camera artifact. It could be something associated with the movement around the Nest camera. And yes, it could conceivably be something being carried by another person. The video has to speak for itself. And this is where today's discussion changes, because we're not examining the light in isolation. We're examining it alongside those 25 unexplained minutes. At 1:47, the camera disconnects. 25 minutes later, the system detects activity. 16 minutes after that, Nancy's pacemaker application disconnects from her phone. And somewhere in the video evidence surrounding Porch Guy's activity, viewers believe that they can see an unexplained moving light off to the side. We just seen this in the video. Maybe
because movement matters. If we're simply seeing a fixed porch light or reflection, we'd expect certain characteristics. If the source itself moves, we have a different problem to explain. Watch Porch Guy. Then watch the light. Are their movements connected? When Porch Guy moves, does the light move away from what would suggest it's attached to him? Or does it appear to move independently? Independent movement would be far more interesting than just seeing a flashlight. There are several possibilities.
Now, if there was another person involved, where would that person be? They wouldn't necessarily stand directly beside the Porch Guy. That wouldn't make sense. And if I'm planning something like this with another person, I want somebody watching what I cannot watch. Maybe the road or the driveway or the neighboring houses and the headlights. People walking dogs at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's unheard of. Someone unexpectedly maybe coming home. The police. Anything that threatens the operation. And if somebody is manipulating a security camera, having another person provide light while staying partially concealed isn't an impossible scenario. But again, possible.
It could be some type of flashlight, an electronic device, equipment associated with Porch Guy, a reflected light, an infrared or camera artifact, or yes, something being carried by another person. The video has to speak for itself. And this is where the discussion changes, because we're not examining the light in isolation. We're examining it alongside those 25 unexplained minutes. Maybe those things have absolutely nothing to do with each other. But they deserve to be examined together. This is where the evidence demands we consider a question that changes everything. Watch the video again. Watch it several times.
If that light can be explained by Porch Guy's equipment or the camera itself, I'll tell you. If slowing this footage down shows that, what appears to be movement is simply compression or reflection, I'll tell you that. Because we're not trying to prove that there were multiple offenders. We're trying to determine whether the evidence allows us to reasonably consider it. And right now,
the first time, watch only Porch Guy. The second time, ignore him completely and watch the right side of the screen. Then watch the light itself and ask yourself, does it move? Does it appear to be carried? Does its movement correspond with Porch Guy, or does it appear independent? If you think you see a hand, fingers, another person.
Because determining whether one person or multiple people participated changes how we understand the entire case. One offender means that one person potentially planned this, carried it out, transported Nancy, and has managed to remain unidentified. Multiple offenders changes the investigation dramatically because now there are relationships, communications. There are vehicles and potential disagreements. There are DNA sources and digital footprints. And listen, more people carrying the burden of keeping that same secret. Every additional participant creates another potential point where the operation can eventually...
Or a particular device. Note exactly what frame or second you're looking at. Because we need to be looking at the same evidence instead of everyone looking at different moments. Now, if there was another person involved, where would that person be?